This week I'm selling my Fuji X-100F. This camera has been like a friend to me for 2.5 years, ever since I bought it in 2018. I bought it from Map Camera on eBay. It was used and it was in really nice shape. It was only a couple months old at that point, but it was basically because I wanted something that had a fully dedicated stance on photography. It just did one thing and it did it really well. It was designed to do one single type of photography. That really appeals to me. I bought it September of that year, right before I went on a trip with my coworkers to Seattle. We were going to a conference and I had a role to play in that conference. One of the things I was supposed to do is take pictures of the environment at this conference because my team was going to put on a similar conference back in Ann Arbor where we were based. I knew I was going to be spending a lot of time in the city. So in preparation for that trip, I ended up buying this camera because I wanted to do some street photography in Seattle. I wanted to walk around. I wanted to use a rangefinder style camera. I wanted to go to Chinatown, or the International District as it's called, and just enjoy the city and take some pictures. Out to be a fantastic camera for trips, but also for family events and just casual snapshots. When the pandemic hit, I just kind of stopped using it. We weren't going to family events. We weren't going on vacations. We weren't going on little weekend road trips. So all the reasons why I bought this camera just sort of disappeared. And it just sat on my shelf and I didn't really use it. I haven't used it in like 5 months, 6 months, something like that. One of the things I like most about this camera is having really quick access to the shutter. The shutter turned out to be something that I use all the time. In fact, I ended up a lot of times shooting in shutter priority rather than aperture priority. Most people shoot in aperture priority, but with this, it felt very intuitive to just shoot shutter priority, where you just turn the aperture all the way over to auto and set your shutter to basically like 1,000th of a second. If you're in broad daylight doing street photography, 500th of a second or 1,000th of a second, something like that. And then choose something like your lowest ISO setting. It made for some pretty nice ability to freeze motion, freeze people walking by, especially if you were zone focusing, which is another thing that I tried to get better at with this camera, setting it to manual and then using the back button to focus the camera to a certain distance, setting the aperture maybe to like f11, something like that. And then your camera's pre-focused, so then you can basically just point and click. That's pretty cool technique for photographing strangers as you walk past them. You basically just like pull the camera up and just click the shutter button and freeze the motion of the person walking right past you. It's pretty cool technique. This camera is made for stuff like that. It's kind of ironic that this camera is designed to be so incredibly simple, yet when you add a couple of different accessories to it, it really extends the functionality of the camera. So I was hugely tempted to buy that SquareHood. You've probably seen it on Instagram. If you're at all interested in this particular camera, you've probably seen the SquareHood. It's super expensive. It's like $70 or something like that. And then it's, another $20 to have it shipped to the United States. That was, it was a vanity purchase, but it really looks really good and really protects the lens of this camera. So that was an extra almost $100 that I spent on this. And then I also spent like $70 on the Lensmate thumb grip, which also just turned out to be a fantastic purchase. Seemed like a vanity purchase at the time. Both of those purchases were pretty indispensable. And since they match up perfectly with this camera, I decided to just sell those with it as well. So whoever gets this camera, basically gets like the entire setup and all the work and research that I did to get those things. So it's quite a nice setup that I had going. If I ever end up getting the X100V, which I hope to, or the whatever comes out after that, the X106 or whatever they'll call it. I don't know, the VI, I don't know what it'll be called. But if I end up getting the new version of it, I think I would probably end up making those same exact purchases because they are just so helpful to the shooting process in general. And they make it feel a little more stable, sturdy, protected. And those are all things that you want when you're walking around, in misty conditions, hazy drizzle, things like that. I always use the rangefinder feature on here. It's really nice to be able to just look through this through the side here, rather than with the X-T30, you have to kind of press your nose up against the camera to get to the center, because that's where the EVF is at. But with the X100F, it's all the way on the side, which makes for a pretty nice experience. You can just kind of put it up to your eye real quick and take your picture. I never really used the optical viewfinder because I found that when I would compose inside the optical viewfinder, the composition would be off. I've heard that there's like a known parallax discrepancy between basically like the boundary lines or the marking lines inside the optical viewfinder and what you actually get in your finished image. That to me kind of drove me nuts. I would accidentally end up cropping off somebody's head a little bit, or certain things would end up entering the frame, but I didn't really intend for them to do that. So I've heard that that's much better on the X100V. So that's another thing that I'm excited about if I ever end up getting that camera. But again, I'm not really going to make the jump for that camera anytime soon. I think I'm going to make another video where I catalog some of the other pictures I took with this and break them off into different kind of groups. Like I'd like to do a video just based on those Bauhaus pictures, and another video just based on pictures that I took in Seattle, or maybe just street photography in general. Not necessarily just with this camera, but with my other cameras as well. So anyhow, that's what I'd like to do next. Okay, so that's it. I think that's all I have to say about this Fuji X-100F. It's been a real blast using this camera. I took it to so many different places. It feels like it's a part of me, but it's time to move on. It's time to sell it. It's time to embrace some different styles of photography for a while, and to just kind of wait out this pandemic until we can, go on vacations again and go to cities again, things like that. So for now, I'm just sort of content with my X-T30 and my different lenses, and taking my bike rides out into the country. One of these days, I'll get back to doing a bit of street photography, but not right now. So there you go. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed the images, and I'll see you in another video. but I never used the flash on this camera. I don't know if I even know how to turn it on. Does anybody use the flash on these cameras? I don't think anybody actually does.